Hi, welcome to Class 8, Video 1. For Class 8, we will be talking about evaluating arguments. In Class 2, I taught you about the idea of an argument and how to put an argument in standard form. Then we previewed some of the approaches to critical thinking, including the other ones from psychology and social epistemology. Now in Class 8, we are returning to argument, and we are talking about what makes an argument good. To start with, I had you do an exercise I learned from my colleague, Professor Erica Stonestreet, where you had to sort arguments into different piles based on how good you thought they were. My hope was, as you did this, different patterns emerged, bringing out different ways an argument could go wrong. So for the first part of this video, I'm just going to do the exercise myself and show you the patterns I hoped you would find. So let's take a look at that exercise, and I'm going back over to an earlier video that I shot. Okay, so let's just open the exercise here, it's a little bit tricky to use the screen because it gets really crowded. So I'm going to make the screen full-sized. And I'm just going to start by pulling everything to the bottom so that we can begin to have some space to work with. And I'm not even going to worry about how things are arranged. But actually, so now that we've got some space, I'm going to start making big piles up top for major categories. So let's pull up argument A here. All people are mortal. Socrates is a person, therefore Socrates is mortal. Ooh, there's a typo there. That's embarrassing. So this is a good argument. In fact, this is going to be a standard example going along of what we're going to call a valid argument, a sound argument. It's really the best we can do. So we'll put that over here. And now we have argument B. And it's attached, but I'll pull it off here. Well, maybe I won't pull it off. There we go. All dogs are dinosaurs. Cupcake is a dog. Cupcake is a dinosaur. Well, gosh, that looks similar to the first argument, right? It's got the same all X are Y. So-and-so is an X, therefore so-and-so is a Y, but dogs aren't dinosaurs. So I'm going to put that over here because that's different. Okay. Cleveland is either in Ohio, Florida, or California. Cleveland is not in California, therefore Cleveland is in Florida. That's another bad argument, right? But it's got this false conclusion. Cleveland is in Florida. It's like the first premise sets up process of elimination, but the second premise only eliminates one of the options, and you need to eliminate two to get to a conclusion. I'm going to put this one way over here, right? And so what you can see now is we can start putting other arguments in these basic piles. Right. There are a lot of different ways that we could divide things up, but actually 3 piles is an easy one. Okay, so for instance, we'll do D next. All dogs are mammals. True. All members of the species Canis familiaris are mammals. That's true. Canis familiaris is just the Latin name for dog. All dogs are members of the species Canis familiaris. These are all true statements, but I'm not sure I like this argument. Why not? Well, look over here. Look at this one. Separate. Come off. Try it. Oop, there we go. All dogs are mammals. All cats are mammals. All dogs are cats. See, that argument doesn't work. It's not just, it's like the Cleveland one. The conclusion is false. But in general, right, if you've got 2
category, if you're saying two things belong to the same category, that doesn't mean they're the same thing. This is going to go over here. And, well, if I was doing a 4-pile version, I might give D its own pile. But I'm going to do a 3-pile version, and I'm just going to put it over here. So these are bad arguments. These are good arguments. And then these are arguments that look like the good arguments, but are wrong somehow. So E is another one that looks like this. If Abraham Lincoln was beheaded, he would be dead. Abraham Lincoln was beheaded, therefore he is dead. That follows, but one of the premises is false, so that doesn't really work. And we can keep sorting them like this for a while, but I'm not going to do the full exercise here. What happens if you do the full exercise with 3 piles is you get something like this. Your first pile is going to be the best arguments. This is like the one where we said all people are mortal, Socrates is a person, therefore Socrates is mortal. Next up are going to be ones that look like the first set of arguments. They're structured the same way, but they contain false statements. And the last pile are going to be arguments that are bad, not just because they contain false statements, but because the reasoning in them itself doesn't work. If we went further, we could divide this last pile into 2 separate groups, ones that have false statements and ones that don't. But basically, the 3-pile division is easy enough to understand what we're doing because it winds up corresponding to 3 basic ideas in the terminology that is standardly used in critical thinking and logic courses. The best arguments are called sound. The middle class of arguments are called valid but not sound. And the final class of arguments are called invalid.
So really, this way of dividing up the arguments shows 2 of the important ways arguments can go wrong. One is that one or more of the premises could be false. The other is that the inference is weak. So an argument has 2 kind of components. There are the premises, and then there's the motion from the premises to the conclusion, which we call the inference. Either of those can be faulty. And so that gives us 2 of the ways that the argument can go wrong. So basically, when you're just looking at the argument itself, there are 2 questions you should ask. Are the premises true? And if the premises were true, would they support the conclusion? So you need to check the reasons. Are the premises true? Then check the conclusion. Check the reasoning. You want to see if you can move from the premises to the conclusion. And when you do that, what you have to do is imagine that the premises are true. So in the earlier silly examples, when you think about all people are carrots, you set aside the fact that that's not true, imagine it's true, and then see if that leads to the conclusion, right? The third standard question we want to ask is that we want to check for missing information. And this is because we're in the practical world here. And so we don't just think about the argument itself, we think about the argument in its context. So we want to ask, has any relevant information been omitted from the premises? So really, you just want to make this a habit. Whenever you encounter any argument, check the reasons. Are the premises true? Check the reasoning. If the premises were true, would they support the conclusion? Check for missing information. Has any relevant information been omitted from the premises? And you just want to always make this a habit.
So basically, there are 2 standard ways an argument could go wrong. The premises could be false, or the reasoning could be faulty. So there are two standard questions you need to ask every time you encounter an argument. First, you need to check the reasons. Are the premises true? Then you need to check the reasoning. If the premises were true, would they support the conclusion? And really, you should make this a habit, even outside of logic classes, critical thinking classes, anything like that. Whenever you see an argument, check the reasons, check the reasoning. Yeah. The other thing you need to remember is that you don't want to mistake the conclusion for the argument. When we evaluate arguments, we are inclined to think that arguments for conclusions we already believe are good arguments. It's like someone says something that's true, and whatever reason they give, you say, yeah, that's why. But this isn't the case. You can have bad arguments for true conclusions. I think an interesting example of this is in the history of European philosophy, or arguments for the existence of God. A lot of people spend a lot of time trying to prove logically that God must exist. And these get really tempting for believers because the conclusion is something they already believe. So they're inclined to think that the argument must also be good. But honestly, a lot of times these arguments aren't very good. And this is a whole theological thing. But my point is simply, don't mistake the conclusion for the argument. You can have a bad argument for a true conclusion.
Okay, up next we have more of Class 8. So we've got the reading next. I had you do this exercise first to introduce you intuitively to the ideas that we're going to be talking about. And then you've got a reading on it. And then after that, you've got the exercises that are included with the reading, and then the second video, and that concludes Class 8.